At 7 years old, Spartan boys didn't start school. They were taken from their families and handed to the state. From that moment on, hunger was deliberate, pain was routine, mercy was erased, childhood wasn't protected, it was destroyed. This wasn't abused by accident, it was policy, a system designed to strip fear, crush weakness, and turn children into weapons. This is the true story of the Agoge. The brutal training that turned Spartan boys into killers. And this was Sparta. Today, we're venturing into the darkest corners of the ancient world, dissecting the brutal, blood-soaked training regimen that transformed ordinary boys into the most feared warriors in history. Forget the Hollywood versions. Forget the romanticized tales. This is the true story of the Agoge, a system so extreme, so relentless, that it redefined the very concept of childhood. Prepare yourself. What you're about to hear will challenge your understanding of human endurance and the limits of human cruelty. Picture a society so obsessed with military might that it turned children into instruments of war. In Sparta, a boy's destiny was not to be loved, but to serve the state, to conquer fear, and ultimately, to become a master of death. Let's journey back to the beginning, to the very first trial a Spartan child faced, the moment he entered this world. A Spartan infant was not welcomed as a precious gift. He was assessed as a potential weapon. Immediately after birth, elders, grim, unyielding figures of the Spartan government, examined the newborn for any sign of imperfection. Any defect, any hint of weakness, any perceived flaw that might hinder his future as a warrior was cause for rejection. A baby deemed too fragile was taken to the slopes of Mount Taygetus, abandoned to the elements, left to die. This was not an act of cruelty, they believed, but an act of culling. Only the strong were worthy to carry on the Spartan line. There were no second chances, no appeals. Survival of the fittest began at the very first breath. If a child managed to survive this initial judgment, he was granted a few fleeting years with his family. Those early years were surprisingly gentle, a deceptive calm before the storm. But even amidst the tenderness, Spartan parents lived with the chilling knowledge that at the age of 7, their son would be taken from them by the state. And when that day arrived, childhood vanished in an instant. Toys were replaced with weapons. Warm beds gave way to hard, unforgiving pallets in communal barracks. The comfort of a mother's embrace was exchanged for the cold, unyielding discipline of the Agoge. The Agoge, meaning the leading away, was far more than just a training program. It was a total immersion experience, a complete restructuring of a young boy's mind and body. Its purpose was brutally simple: to annihilate fear, to eradicate weakness, and to forge boys into relentless, unfeeling killing machines. From the moment a boy entered the Agoge, he ceased to be an individual. He became a possession of Sparta, a tool to be sharpened and honed for the glory of the state. He lived in barracks alongside dozens of other boys, sharing every aspect of his life with them. They ate together, slept together, trained together, and suffered together, bound by a shared ordeal. The state dictated every aspect of their existence, what they wore, when they slept, and how much they ate. And the food, the food. It was deliberately meager, barely enough to sustain them. This wasn't an oversight, it was a carefully calculated lesson. A true Spartan, they believed, must be resourceful, capable of surviving in the harshest conditions. If a boy was hungry enough, he would learn to steal. And if he was strong enough, he would learn to steal without getting caught. Here's where the twisted logic of the Agoge became truly apparent. Stealing wasn't the crime, getting caught was. If a boy successfully stole food and evaded detection, he was praised for his cunning and resourcefulness. But if he was caught, he was subjected to a brutal beating, not for the act of stealing itself, but for the failure of his execution. Failure was anathema in Sparta, a sign of weakness that could not be tolerated. Imagine the psychological toll of this constant hunger, the gnawing emptiness in their stomachs driving them to desperate measures. Picture a 10-year-old boy creeping through the shadows of his own city, risking a severe whipping for a handful of food. Every day was a test of survival, a constant battle against the pangs of hunger, a constant battle against the pangs of hunger, and the fear of punishment. The Agoge transformed the basic instinct for survival into a finely honed skill. But the Agoge was about far more than just stealing food. The physical training was relentless, designed to push the boys to their absolute limits. They were trained to endure pain, cold, exhaustion, and injury without complaint. They were encouraged to fight each other constantly, not in friendly sparring matches, but in savage brawls that left them bruised, bloodied, and scarred. Older boys, acting as mentors and enforcers, were charged with the task of weeding out any sign of softness or weakness. A whimper of fear was met with a swift blow. A single tear was punished with escalating violence. A complaint was silenced with brutal efficiency. The Agoge systematically dismantled each boy's sense of self, stripping away his individuality and molding him into a compliant, unfeeling soldier. By the time they reached their teenage years, the boys had been transformed into something almost unrecognizable. Their bodies were hard and lean, sculpted by countless hours of grueling drills. They ran until their lungs burned, climbed until their muscles screamed, wrestled until their bones ached. They mastered the use of the spear, the sword, and the shield, becoming lethal weapons in human form. But physical strength was only one aspect of their training. Sparta sought to create not just strong bodies, but unwavering minds. The boys were taught to suppress to never show pain, to embrace hardship as a virtue. Pleasure was seen as a dangerous distraction. Comfort was an enemy to be vanquished. Only discipline mattered. In the Agoge, a boy's character was subjected to as much pressure as his physical form. Every aspect of his personality was scrutinized, molded, and shaped to fit the Spartan ideal. One of the most shocking and disturbing rituals of the Agoge was the ordeal at the altar of Artemis Orthia. Picture a teenage boy, stripped naked and forced to run a gauntlet through a crowd of older Spartans wielding whips. Each lash tore into his flesh, leaving raw, bleeding welts across his back. The goal was brutally simple: endure the pain without uttering a sound. Endurance was a testament to his strength, his discipline, his unwavering commitment to the Spartan ideal. Some boys succumbed to the pain, their screams echoing through the sanctuary. They were branded as failures, their weakness exposed for all to see. Others endured in silence, their faces contorted in agony, their bodies trembling with the effort, but their spirits unbroken. They were hailed as heroes, examples of the unwavering resolve that defined a true Spartan. Tragically, some boys died during this horrific ritual, their bodies unable to withstand the relentless punishment, but the Spartans did not mourn their loss. They considered it an honor, a testament to the boys' willingness to sacrifice everything for the glory of Sparta. Even after years of relentless training and brutal rituals, the Agoge was not yet finished. The final test, reserved for the most promising young Spartans, was the krypteia, a secret, clandestine operation that blurred the line between training and outright terror. Selected boys were sent out into the countryside, armed with nothing but a knife and a cloak. Their mission was twofold: to survive alone in the wilderness, honing their skills in stealth and survival, and to spy on the helot population, the enslaved people who formed the backbone of the Spartan economy. But the most chilling aspect of the krypteia was the order to kill. These young Spartans were instructed to murder any helot they deemed a threat to Spartan authority, or simply to terrorize the population into submission. The krypteia was designed to harden them further, to instill in them a cold, calculating ruthlessness. It taught them what it meant to take a life without hesitation, to view other human beings as expendable tools. A boy who returned from the krypteia was no longer a boy. He had been transformed into a Spartan warrior in the truest, most terrifying sense of the word. Once they reached adulthood, these hardened survivors became full-fledged members of the Spartan army, the most disciplined and feared fighting force in the ancient world. But their training did not end there. Daily drills, constant conditioning, and brutal battlefield exercises kept them at peak physical and mental readiness. Everything they had endured, every hardship they had overcome, had forged them into soldiers unlike any other. Spartan warriors did not break ranks. They did not flee from battle. Their discipline was legendary. Their endurance was unmatched. Their loyalty to Sparta was absolute. And it all stemmed from that fateful day at the age of 7, when they entered the Agoge and left their childhoods behind forever. Let's pause and consider the nature of a society that would demand such sacrifice from its youngest members. Why did Sparta go to such extremes? What drove them to create a system so brutal, so unforgiving? The answer lies in the precarious position Sparta occupied in the ancient world, surrounded by enemies, outnumbered by rival city-states, and constantly threatened by internal rebellion from the Helot population. The Spartans believed that only the strongest, most disciplined society could survive. The Agoge was not simply a training program. It was the cornerstone of their entire civilization, a system designed to ensure their survival at any cost. The Agoge was more than just physical and mental conditioning. It created a bond between Spartan warriors that was virtually unbreakable. These boys had grown up together, suffered together, bled together. They had shared the same hardships, the same fears, the same triumphs. By the time they reached adulthood, they were connected by a lifetime of shared experiences, forged in the fires of the Agoge. On the battlefield, this bond was their greatest weapon. A Spartan did not just fight for himself, he fought for his brothers, for the men who had endured the Agoge alongside him. He knew that they would stand by him, no matter the odds, and he would do the same for them. This is why battles involving Spartans became legendary. At Thermopylae, a small band of Spartan warriors held off a massive Persian army for 3 days, buying time for the rest of Greece to prepare for war. At Plataea, the Spartan army led the Greek forces to a decisive victory over the Persians, securing their freedom. Spartan courage was not a gift. It was earned, forged through years of suffering, hardship, and relentless discipline. It's crucial to avoid romanticizing the Agoge. It was an incredibly effective system for creating warriors, but it was also undeniably brutal and dehumanizing. Countless boys did not survive the Agoge, their bodies and minds broken by the relentless pressure. Many more lived their lives under constant scrutiny, forever haunted by the memories of their childhoods. Sparta was not a utopia of warriors. It was a war machine, a society that sacrificed everything: individual freedom, personal expression, and even basic human compassion for the sake of military might. The story of the Agoge remains relevant today because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. How far can humans be pushed? How much can discipline shape a person? What are the ethical implications of sacrificing individual well-being for the sake of collective strength? These are the questions that the Spartans compel us to consider. When we think of Spartans, we often conjure images of idealized figures, men with perfect physiques, unwavering courage, and unshakable loyalty. But behind those images lie the stories of countless children who endured unimaginable suffering, boys who learned to kill before they learned to read, and young men who saw death not as an enemy, but as a tool. So, the next time you hear the word Spartan, remember the 7-year-old boy stepping into the Agoge for the first time. Remember his hunger, his fear, his pain. Remember the cold nights without blankets, the brutal beatings, the constant pressure to be stronger, faster, and more ruthless. Remember that none of this was accidental. It was a deliberate, calculated system designed to create the most formidable warriors the world has ever seen. The Agoge wasn't just a training program. It was a crucible, a forge that transformed boys into weapons. This was the brutal training that turned Spartan boys into killers, and it left a mark on history that continues to fascinate and disturb us to this day.